Now, Windows PowerShell is not the end-all be-all of the world. Sometimes, to get the job done, you are going to be running external commands. And sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. So this nugget's going to really help you focus on how to use these things and on some of the tips and tricks you can use to get them running a little bit more effectively, especially when the shell wants to be a little bit stubborn about it. This is going to be a very, very short nugget with literally just a couple of tips and tricks to help get you past the gotchas that you can run into when you're trying to run external commands from within PowerShell. Now, it kind of seems like, well, why would I bother? If it's so difficult to run external commands in PowerShell, I'll just go back to the old command.exe shell and run them there. Yeah, except there's times when you're going to want to incorporate these external commands into your PowerShell scripts. And I'm actually going to demonstrate this using a command that I have frequently had to incorporate into PowerShell scripts. And so it's useful to know these tricks just so you can get those things running without the grief that sometimes comes along. To kind of demonstrate some of the techniques you'll need to use, I'm going to use the iCackles command line. This guy is great for manipulating file and folder permissions from the command line, but this guy is also famous for being difficult to use in Windows PowerShell. And I'm actually just going to grab one of these examples off the bottom. So I'll run iCackles. I have a logs folder here, so we'll just change permissions on everything there. And we will grant permissions to administrator, granting delete and write discretionary access control permissions. And it explodes. And there's a couple of reasons. Part of it is because PowerShell sees that this is a command, and it knows these things are arguments, but it's trying to parse those. It's trying to do something with them. And what it's seeing is these parentheses here. Now, the iCackles command just uses the parentheses as a way of kind of grouping this list of permissions. PowerShell sees that as a command it should execute first. So it tries to execute that and then says, all right, well, the first command is D, and I don't know of a command named D. That's what this is saying. I don't recognize D. What you typically have to do with this, at least here in version 2 of PowerShell, is start putting some of these things in quotation marks. Now, because this entire hunk is what iCackles needs to see, administrator, colon, and then all this stuff in parentheses, I'm going to put all of that in double quotation marks and see if PowerShell is able to deal with that. Now that it's in double quotes, PowerShell is not going to try and interpret that as a command. It's just going to treat it as a string, and there we go. And that's often what you wind up having to do is play with this stuff, put pieces of it, particularly arguments that seem to be upsetting PowerShell, into quotation marks so that it can kind of try and not deal with them and pass them through successfully. So version 2 really required a lot of playing. So did version 1. You really just kind of had to trial and error your way through until you managed to get things munged up in a way that PowerShell could deal with. Now, version 3 of PowerShell makes stuff a little bit easier on us. Let's get that iCackles back up again. You can do the exact same trick, right? I could do, let's see, I have to type this all over because I'm on Windows 8 now. C logs star grant, and then if you remember in quotation marks, I did the administrator D WDAC, and that'll run successfully. The quotes are still required. If I do it without the quotes, I'll get the same error that I got before. Well, different error, but it's still trying to interpret this as a command is the problem. So what you want to do instead, especially if you're using version 3, is really take a command like this and tell PowerShell, look, just run iCackles and stop trying after that point. Don't think about the rest of it. Just send it along the line. And rather than having to munge things together in munge things together into any kind of quotes or whatever, let's get back to the command I wanted. There we go. Just after your command, so iCackles is the command, do that. And that's just telling PowerShell, okay, look, I want you to run this part, figure out what this is, iCackles, figure out what command that is, run it, and then just pass all of this off to that command without thinking about it, and it runs fine. It's a great new feature in PowerShell 3 that lets us work a lot more easily with external commands that have more complex syntax without having to worry about munging it up and quoting things and all that other crazy stuff. Now for the next little tip, I needed to make sure that I started a new shell for you. So we close the old one, we've got the new one up. If you just open a brand new shell, you will find that if you try to access a variable called last exit code, I'm going to hit tab now, you get nothing. If you try to type the thing out, you get nothing. $last exit code is created automatically the first time you run a command that produces an exit code. It is populated automatically with whatever that command returned. So here's a good example. Ping localhost. I'm going to let this finish, and then last tab. See, now I get $last exit code, and it's 0. Most of your external commands are going to return 0 if they completed successfully. Now let's contrast that. I'll run ping again, but this time I'm going to hit Control-C in the middle of it, and I'll look at last exit code, and now I get this different exit code, which there's no universal meaning to exit codes apart from the fact that everyone generally recognizes 0 as ending successfully. Beyond that, every command gets to make up its own codes. I'm presuming that gigantic number is interrupted. Contrast again. Let's ping a non-existent computer. I hope that's non-existent. I did this on a network one time. I was at a customer's place doing a private class, and there was a computer called Not on the network, and I got a ping back immediately, and I had to stare at it for like 5 minutes before my brain could wrap around it. All right, last exit code, 1. Generally, a lot of commands will kind of take the approach that 1 means exited unsuccessfully or ended unsuccessfully. But again, it's kind of a per command thing. So this is another good trick. If you're incorporating external commands into a PowerShell script and you simply need to know if the command finished successfully, $last exit code is one way for you to quickly get at that information. Now, my next trick is going to be a little bit more involved. Let me go get a line where I used that regex. There. I'm going to just hit the arrow key to put that on the command line. I just want to put the regular expression into a variable because I don't want to have to keep typing it. So having the regex in a variable is going to make it easier to get to. So let's say I still have my output. Let's say I don't know that it's the second line of text that's going to have my match. I haven't figured that out yet. What I can do is take the entire output and match it against my regular expression. Now this time, instead of telling me true or false, and instead of populating the matches collection, it's going to return an array that includes every line where a match was found. Now I know from experimentation that this particular output is only going to have a single match. So what I can do is wrap all this in parentheses and just grab out the first matching line. And then I can match that against my regex again. This time I get my true false, and I can go after matches address to pull out just the address. So when it comes to using external commands, regular expressions offer a fantastic way to parse through the output and extract, especially if you're using captures like I did here, extract the information that you're looking for. Now there's one more tip I can share with you. Let's take a look at that iCackles command again. And I'm just going to grab one of its last examples. We'll save the ACLs. Here we go. Let's just grab this one. This is fun. Copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to get ahead of myself just a little bit because I think one of the neat things that you can do with these commands is integrate them into a PowerShell script. For example, I can create a function called grant access, and I can create a parameter in here with the username I want to grant access to, and I'm just going to paste that iCackles command. And instead of administrator, which is what was being granted, I'll just put username. So then you have to start putting these things in quotes, right, so that it'll all work. And we did this before to make that function, I think. But the point is that, and because this is double quotes, remember the variable is going to get replaced with its contents. So the idea here is although some of these external PowerShell, external non-PowerShell commands might be a little funky, you can hide the funkiness by creating a little PowerShell function to wrap around them, or simply including these in a script, and you can substitute PowerShell variables for certain portions of the command parameters so that it becomes kind of controllable. It makes it a little bit more integrated into PowerShell. Now this particular example will make a lot more sense much later in this series when we start talking about functions and advanced functions and how to use PowerShell to build tools. And I think building a PowerShell wrapper around an external command is a great way to hide the complexity from other folks, as well as a great way to make it simply more convenient for you yourself to use. So no need to save all that, but again, no reason not to integrate these external commands into everything you're doing in PowerShell. You just need to know a few tricks to make it easier. See, I told you that was going to be an exceptionally short nugget with just a couple of tips and tricks that you can use to incorporate external commands into PowerShell, either on the command line or if you needed to roll that into a script. You can imagine writing a script, I suppose, where iCackles would be a useful thing to do. Provisioning a new user's home directory, for example, is something that you might have to assign folder permissions to, and getting iCackles to work as part of a PowerShell script certainly be useful. And now you know some of the tricks for making those things work a lot more easily. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.